I went back and watched a video that we recorded in 2016. And at that time, I can't remember the exact timings of Sporting Futures, but we were talking about this new, at that time, new statement of intent from government in the UK about these 5 aspirations for what public investment in sport should achieve.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because on one front, I looked back at that video and heard myself talking about how hopeful that made me and us feel about what might be possible, because it really resonated, talking about coherence, it really resonated with our view of what's possible if sport's done the right way. But it also made me look back and think, and actually we speculated in that conversation about not really seeing or feeling that organisationally people were stepping up to the invitation that created and were recognising the challenge that it represented. And I look back 4 years down the road and go, yeah, that concern was valid, because we haven't really seen a shift. But we're now, given the uniqueness of the context we're in and the crisis that's been created by the pandemic and the fundamental shift to the way people are living their lives and the way organisations are organising, we're now at a point where people are beginning to sit with those challenges and those questions and consider, what are the implications for if we're moving into a world that can't look like the past, that needs to adapt and change? How do we live by those intentions that were stated by that strategy? How do we find a way for sport to more deeply recognise its role in helping people with their physical and mental well-being, in supporting personal development, in supporting societal development, and in supporting economic development? If those are the deeper aspirations that sit behind monies from the public purse going into this thing that we call sport, how do we do right by that in this context now?
Well, does it resonate? I mean, that's, you're right. Is how many people and who were even aware of those 5 things, let alone them then impacting on, when it comes down to it, their day-to-day way of going about their business, if you want to call it that.
So what was really interesting was yesterday or the day before, we had the bizarreness of a virtual parliamentary committee. So the whole video conferencing of what would normally happen in Westminster. And it was the DCMS committee scrutinising decisions now being made about how the sports sector responds to the crisis. So we had Tim Hollingsworth telling the committee all the really exciting things that Sport England are doing in response to this challenge, and that sense of recognising that this isn't just about rescuing the organisations that are vulnerable right now, or for that matter, restoring the old way of life that sport was when we get the opportunity to, but it's also about renewing and reimagining what sport can and should and will have to be in the future. And what Tim referenced in that witness statement to Parliament was the 5 aspirations within Sporting Futures. Was that these are the things that we need to use as our guiding lights in how we navigate forward. So that was hugely encouraging, but it was then polarised by a debate with Catherine Granger about the high performance end of sport, where the political aspiration immediately shrunk to, let's have a really inspirational pageant every 4 years. And let's make sure that we protect the ability of our wonderful high performance sports system, which is incredibly successful now. But the measure of its impact and its efficacy has been narrowed to moments of inspiration once every 4 years, rather than sitting with the very same 5 aspirations for the meaning and purpose that sport generates, being in principle no different whether we're looking at community sport or high performance sport. It's only the context and the practice that shifts.
was essentially a lack of accountability in their questioning almost, or awareness of the things Tim had outlined.
Yeah, and attendance to those things. And I guess that's one of the things that's at the heart of our call to invite people to relearn sporting leadership. That if what we're doing here isn't simply managing the production of an output, in the high performance case, the winning of medals, in the participation case, the thumbs on seats, numbers through the door stuff. If what we're doing here is of a different order of depth and meaning, how do leaders attend to that?
Yeah.
How do leaders act as, how do we invite the expression of leadership rather than the execution of management?
Yeah.
And I think that's the divide at the moment, is we've got so many people, not necessarily by their own intent, but by the environment that they find themselves in when they work their way up the food chain and become an organisational leader, is that actually what's asked of them is to manage a process rather than to lead with principle.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's at the heart of what we want to invite of leaders, is how do you lead with principle, with a set of principles that guide your strategic intent, rather than a set of processes you've inherited that may or may not be fit for purpose.